No mai, haere mai ki Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. The Super Rugby semi-finals are here, and you know there are two men on this show who just can't wait for the showdown between the Blues and the Crusaders down in Christchurch. There was an unbelievable second half turnaround from the Blues as the Chiefs blew their home ground advantage for the final. The Canes lost their mojo in Canberra, and the Reds couldn't keep with the Crusaders, who must now be the favourites, surely, for an all-time Super Rugby bounce back in 2025. Playoffs time means big players stand up, so we're going to have a close look at who is in the race for the All Blacks loose forward spots. So Tutu, Leo Willie, Simon Parker all made big statements on the weekend. So did Beauden Barrett, who surely must have the 10 shirt locked down for the France series. We'll talk about that. We have our weekly Rugby Ready prize, and we're mixing it up this week. The first 10 in get a month of training with All Blacks guru Nick Gill's Rugby Ready team for just $1. Stick around for this week's keyword. We'll also have your emails and comments, the usual in-depth analysis, and Bryn Hall back in the country. Back in the country, Jippa, just in time for the Blues versus the Crusaders. This cannot be a coincidence.
Yeah, well, I don't think either of us saw it coming, but we said last week in terms of the chip on the shoulder, social media, it can go both ways. Well, they certainly backed up their words, and they backed it up big time.
Yeah, and Bryn made his way to Christchurch because that's the place to be this week, of course. Bryn, you must be feeling pretty damn good heading into this clash. Top qualifier, home final if you can get through the Blues.
Whether they've gone 30-0 or was it 29-0, Ross? I'm not too sure what the number is, but no, look, it is exciting. I think we both didn't think that, or even the three of us think that the Chiefs would have lost that game. And I guess the Crusaders, it was something they did talk about if they did get the opportunity to have it. It is a great fortress and I guess opportunity to have a semi-final and a final running through Christchurch. So I had to come down to Christchurch. I believe, me and Jippa probably would have had too much banter and a little bit too much heat.
Oh, I'm coming, mate. Don't you worry, I'm coming. See you, boy.
Figuring it all out, you know, all the talk around town. It's really wet, windy, cold, 5 degrees, 6 degrees. So
Perfect.
It'll rain throughout the whole week, so it's going to be a great night in Christchurch. So really looking forward to, I guess, what's going to be happening in a few days' time.
You know, we love those sorts of temperatures. I'm going to rock the Sunny Bill singlet jacket option. Just have a bit of presence down there sideline.
I'll see you down there, Jip. So
You will. That's what I'm saying, mate. I'm coming for you.
Yeah. It's basically been summer in Auckland this whole time. So,
It's the first day I've had a jersey on.
Pants as well.
I know.
Yeah, my mother's going to be very proud. She'll say to me that Jip, he needs to wear pants.
Well, there you go. They're on just for you.
I always say to her, Mum, he hasn't spent that time doing leg day for nothing.
No.
Show it to the people. Show it to the people.
This doesn't own a lot of pants.
That's for sure. And you guys have got to go make the most of that terrible weather while you can, because next year you're going to be undercover and none of that stuff's going to count anymore, is it?
Well, yeah, it is, Ross. It's right. I think it falls into kind of more so the Forsyth Bar kind of festival feel and running rugby. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a nice, obviously a really cold night in Christchurch. And I know probably a little bit disappointing to see the crowd that turn up for the Reds, considering that it is very cold down here. But I think no doubt they'll get behind and knowing the rivalry with the Blues as well. I think it'd be pretty close to a set. I like to see Jippa laughing. I don't know why he's laughing.
Oh, mate.
I'm hoping.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've spent a fair amount of time down there in a Blues jersey, and a hooker is very close to the sidelines. Yeah. That place will be jam-packed with red. Absolutely jam-packed.
Yeah, and you'll be hearing about it as you walk along.
Yeah, I'm used to that. Tell you what, I got a lot of heat from Chiefs fans around my comments last week on social, on that social post around. I did say they weren't going to be favourites, but there was plenty of hope they could get a result done.
Yeah.
Oh, I basked in that glory, didn't I? Saturday night, it was immaculate.
Yeah, what about the Hurricanes' glory?
Yeah, no, didn't bask in that. That's for sure.
One of our young APs.
I've got the $5 for him.
Yeah.
I said to him, I said I was that confident it was a 1-12 victory for the Canes, I would give him his $5 back. He was very concerned over $5. I think we need to give him a pay rise. Very good at his job.
There's always baked beans. Always baked beans to go to. You can do that, Tommy. Right, so let's get into the turning point for this week, because the reason the Blues are in this final is because of what happened in the second half. The Ashley and Martin turning point, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. Jippa, the Chiefs blew a home final. The discipline in the second half was absolutely a problem.
Yeah, I must admit, even, you saw Clayton McMillan's comments afterwards, and, he sort of just said, when the game's in the balance finals footy, he just felt the last 10 to 15 minutes, just their inability to exit as well as they normally have, and then obviously the discipline at key times where he felt they didn't have to take the risk. They just needed to trust their defensive system and not give the penalty away. They took that risk, and it is, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I remember when Artie got the big turnover against the Blues. It's like, oh, how do you pick that? And we made a big song and dance about it here on the show. It's like how hard that is. It is just showing that it's a very risky game to play, and in the end, it did cost them.
If you look in the first half, that's probably when they had their most opportunities in the game. They had 5 entries. They weren't able to score any tries within it. They did have a couple of penalty goals with Damien McKenzie, but they dominated territory, they dominated position, and weren't able to get that kind of scoreboard pressure, which you probably need in those kind of quarterfinal stage. And to be honest, the Blues defense was outstanding. And we've talked about it not just this year. Last year, they operated at 94% and 134 tackles in that first half, which is world class in terms of being able to trust your defense, especially with what we've seen in the Chiefs the last year and the way that we've touched on with their attack. And I think, I don't know, Jip, if you saw this, but I thought it was quite interesting with the way how the Chiefs did attack. Now, maybe did the Blues put them into that kind of more tight and be able to be a little bit more narrow? We didn't see that quite that large, expansive kind of play that we've seen throughout the year. Did conditions have a bit to play in there? Was it a little bit dewy, and did they kind of fall away and wanted to just go through the front door, which they've done pretty successfully against a lot of teams, bar Moana Pacifica, not too long ago. So, and then you probably go into the second half, 8 defensive penalties, and, not to spot on anybody in particular, but, 7 penny females, 2 penalties in those kind of dying stages gave the Blues an opportunity to be able to come back and, I guess, have those opportunities in the 22. So, both halves, there were different problems, I guess, of what they did. And in saying that, I thought Beauden Barrett was absolutely outstanding in terms of the game management, his array of kicks, like his attacking kicks off counter-attack. We saw the one where, he just missed out on half-time, but, there were multiple ways that he kicked the ball and was able to, I guess, build pressure onto the Blues. So, yeah, a very good performance from the Blues. Nobody gave them really a chance of it, but in saying that, I think they were really good on the way. Apart from the man sitting there with a big smile on his face, it was one that was definitely blown. But the Blues, look, they did very, very well in a lot of areas. And lastly, sorry, Ross, the defensive pressure, which I think is going to be great moving down south. 33% for the Chiefs on the weekend in their line-out. It'll bode them well, knowing that they're going to have to go down and, I guess, disrupt that set piece of the Crusaders in finals footy.
Yeah, look, I think defensively, like Craig McGrath needs to take a massive shout out for the Blues defence over a number of years, but more so obviously the championship winning side last year, and definitely the shining light to get them to be able to squeak into the playoffs and then probably deliver them the ability to go to a semi-final. And now confidence is flying high, but I do think it's off the back of his defensive system and I suppose the defensive group he's working with. And on the flip side, you sort of look at it and you go, how did the Chiefs not score, within that time period with that amount of tackles? And I think the one thing I'd say about the Blues defensive system, they're probably the one team that would probably look more for the stack opportunity, and they almost just leave the defensive breakdown. They don't challenge it a lot to try and get the Duplessis Karifi style turnover. They do just back their system, and they back that their blue wall will just be able to turn up and turn up time and time again. But I do think conditions are different. So you saw a lot of cross-field kicks from the Chiefs. There wasn't that free-flowing, and it's going to be no different in Christchurch. Like how dewy and how cold it's getting, that does, it was still quite a high, both sides left tries out there, over the line, sort of dropping the ball. And man, I wish Bodie had been able to scoop that. He did everything right there, by the way. Like he was going for the slide with the momentum. Yeah. I've never seen a ball stick like that in the ground. But yeah, I just think there was still a lot of errors, and it's just the conditions and that kicking game and time without the ball, which we know the Crusaders are extremely good at, will play a big part. So I think the Blues defence still have a big say in their ability to go all the way, and defence does win championships. And the highlight reel stuff will be the tries, but if you look at the season, even if they aren't to go on and win it, to get to where they've got to, with not always having things flowing the way they'd like on attack, their defence has been a mainstay of strength.
Defence wins championships.
Oh, yeah. And defence wins in winter, I tell you that for free.
Wins in winter. And Super Rugby's on in the winter, as Stephen Donald would say.
I know. I don't want to credit him, because I know that he's hyped himself up and up around that. Especially when he's like, Joe, write this down, it's special.
Yeah, it's very special, and it's true, because we're there now. Stacking, you said stacking on defence. What does that mean?
It's like when players try to get their hips underneath and keep, I suppose, an upright ball carrier to lead to a turnover scrum, rather than, because they're all big, strong athletes, and maybe they see the risk as too high in and around the breakdown. And I think it's also their tackle style. Like if you use a Dalton Papali'i, he's driving you back. And if he drives you back, then maybe they'll counter-ruck.
Yeah.
Again, they don't normally look for the turnover. They look for that counter-ruck, or they look for that stacking opportunity to lead to a scrum, because their set piece is strong.
Yeah. Interesting in the other teams, let's say, for instance, if you look at the Hurricanes on the weekend, Bryn, they're usually so damn good at the breakdown, so good at getting turnovers, and we didn't see that at all.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm sure the Brumbies had 6 turnovers at the break and the Hurricanes had 0. And we've talked around a lot this year in terms of them probably being the highest breakdown turnover team in the competition with their loose forward trio, their backs can get in and around that area as well. So it was a big area that I guess the Brumbies wanted to go in there, be really good in the collision area on both sides of the ball, whether it be the defensive breakdown, the attacking breakdown as well of the Hurricanes. And it was, probably their slowest 0 to 3 seconds ball that the Hurricanes have had this year in probably the last 4 to 5 weeks. So it was a big area around being able to stop the Hurricanes and being able to, I guess, have that attacking face play shift that we've seen a lot through, whether that's through Roryguard. I think Roryguard maybe had 1 or 2 runs during the whole game. His line breaks and his defenders beaters wasn't able to do that with the way that I thought the Brumbies slowed down the ball really well. First and second efforts in and around that. The tackle technique, where there was a chop and a stick, kind of the example that Jippa used, they did that really well defensively. So they didn't give the Hurricanes that free-flowing ball. But even in saying that, they did score 28 points as well. So I guess the opportunities that the Hurricanes probably had in the back end of the game when they were chasing it, because of how efficient the Brumbies were in the 22. I think they were 5 out of 5 in the breakdown area, in the 22 area, with their line out more and their forwards going picking and going. It was really hard for them. So the efficiency of what the Brumbies did in that 22 area was a big reason why the Brumbies won that game as well.
Tactically as well, like Duplessis Karifi made 17 tackles. And you take him out of that ability to get those. He's a big catalyst of that. I think Devin Flanders was the next best with 22. So they to me, it looks like they targeted the 2 loose forward trio players that have the ability to get that turnover. And even though Peter Lakai was there, again, because where loose forwards are, it was either they were running in them to get tackled, or they were taking the ball somewhere else they couldn't get to. Yeah, and it worked well, and they found space. And I agree with Bryn. Like they still scored 28 points, and potentially left a few out there. But to get 0 breakdown, it's the only game this season that they've had 0. Like they're normally a minimum 3 or 4. Like it's just a given that you're going to get a couple with them. So the Brumbies just executed superbly. I don't think it would be fair to make it about the Hurricanes not stepping up. I think the Brumbies just executed around that area superbly and then took their opportunities when they presented it.
The one thing, if you are Brumbies and if you are the Chiefs previewing them, the 2 tries that they did score early doors when the Hurricanes scored them, it was on their edge defence. And with the Chiefs and the way they've played this year, you'd have to think they still have their mindset. They want to go through teams, but the animation, I guess, the width of their attack, it's going to be able to put the Brumbies under a lot of pressure. So they're going to need to be able to get that those connections right with whoever is on the edge, whether it's a 9, 10 winger, whoever it is, and being able to be very clear around what your role is if you are going to come out and try and stop it. Because I think the Chiefs, they will score points and will see that as an opportunity to score some points and make some big bends and line breaks in that game.
The thing with the Chiefs is they'll find the space. So I actually think the problem was, I think it was Lolosio in the first 2 tries. Like Peter Umaga-Jensen, talk about his form in the final series. Like he put on 2 beautiful meat pies that we're talking about. But he drew his defender in, and then with that conviction and his strength made Lolosio come in and tackle him. So he drew that defender in, which created the space for Ruben Love, and then I think it was Whinianga Nufo was the second try. But then again, I think it was Fet Luiai, the second 5 for the Brumbies, jammed in when Duplessis Karifi went through. I know Duplessis Karifi dropped it after he went through. But again, with the injuries in the midfield, I think the midfield of the Chiefs would have learnt a lot from last week, not being able to free up the outsides, and they clearly went for a plan, but they have to target Lolosio on that edge, and sometimes they put their 9 out there a lot as well. They put them together. That's where Ruben Love went through first. So I think that conviction, I think a Daniel Rona can play a big part, man. Like he is seriously good. And if he can commit in and around that area, and a Sean Stevenson drawing him behind like a Ruben Love, I think more often Damien can potentially give early ball to Rona and have that ability to draw in multiple defenders.
Let's just go back to that rolling maul, because we've got a question from one of the people out there who watches the show, and please send us an email through aotearoa-rugbypod@sky.co.nz. This is from Joe Gerards. He says, backs were joining the maul ahead of Pollard. He's referring to the Brumbies. Corey Toole at Arley says, according to World Rugby, players joining the maul do so from behind the feet of the hindmost player. Plus, we had Hooper pulling down a Hurricanes maul with no penalty. You can clearly see the grin on his face when he got away with it. Jippa, you can see them come in, and you can see that they are ending up in front of the person with ball in hand. What are you legally allowed to do to end up in that position?
Yeah, so the key is once the maul is set and going, let's just say it's the hooker, sometimes it's the 7 at the back, but you've got to slide over their back like a bind, like a clear form of the bind, and then even when you go over the next person, you can't just fly them from the angle, but you also can't just roll in there and just find a spot. Like you have to show a clear bind to work your way up, and you can't leave that bind. It's no different when you're hearing from defending players that are trying to wade through. You'll hear refs say, don't release your blind, because they're trying to, that old swimming thing, once they release their bind, then it's penalty, you're out of there. So I went back, because I saw the question, and I went back and watched Corey Toole. He does come over Pollard, and he does show a clear bind for me. Where he could have got himself in trouble was the way he swung his hips in and started driving in. He was teetering on probably being unbound and just directly angling in. It's a little bit like sevens you see at scrums who slide in under the opposing prop, and they put their hand on their hips to sort of, straighten them out to allow that sort of precision. It's not actually technically allowed, but if you're good at it, you can get away with it.
I imagine Bryn puts in those reps to get in behind Malcolm Parks at Kubota.
I'd actually love to see my technique, Jippa. Hopefully you can go through the archives this year in Japan, and a couple of our line-out mauls, a bit of a technique and getting them over the line, big Jippa. So
you're smart. You don't overplay your hand, and you get your shoulder on their backside and just look to shove them over. The moment you go over and you become part of them all is when I'd start to sweat as a coach, if a back's in there, personally.
They don't call him Bryn Horsepower Hall for no reason at all, right?
My improvement, Jippa, is I just need to grab that ball, mate, and just start, get on the back of a Tizano.
That's been your biggest growth, because you used to always rip it off me, and then I'd go in for my one-on-one with TC, and he'd be like, mate, why are you giving that ball out? I'm like, well, I'm trusting the guy that can see things. So you just keep doing what you're doing. You just keep that shoulder on Big Malky's backside, mate, and you just get him those meat pies.
Okay, well, shall we move on? Let's move on into talking a little bit about these loose forwards, because this weekend we've got basically an All Blacks trial with a bunch of informed guys. The All Blacks generally take probably 6 loose forwards within a squad. So if we look at what we're most likely to see, let's start with who is in. Out of that 6, if that's what the number is, Jippa, who is in? No doubt about it.
Well, I'm just going on form.
Yeah.
So Artie.
Yes.
Will be in. I think Wallace Satiti's shown, he's hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Other than injury concerns, and that he's definitely there. We all know that I'm a big fan of Duplessis Khalifi, and I think he's done enough to own that 7 spot, and his point of difference being around that breakdown. And then Luke Jacobson, I think, again, his role in the 7 jersey for the Chiefs and his ability to sort of cover 6, 7, 8 is probably, to me, in terms of the form and the way they've played, has those 4 in from my perspective.
Right.
The next 2, it's pretty hard. And I know we say it time and time again, finals footy matters. Probably the only one unfortunate not to get another week is probably like a Pete Lakai, because that he's got the physical presence. You think about when he got that late call up against the French, man, he played pretty well, and that's a big French pack. And what you're looking for is what we're seeing in terms of their ability to be expansive, but then at international level, it's just a lot more ruthless in and around that collision area. And if you can't dominate there, so someone like Pete Lakai, who has a big future, I still think he would be in and around that selection discussion. Ethan Blackadder coming back. I know he won't have a lot of runs on the board, but if he had a solid game against the Reds, if he backs up against the Blues and then they go to a final, there's no reason why, if he can stay on the field, he won't be considered. We know the selectors like him. I think Hoskins Satutu, man, he had a big shift on the weekend, and there probably hasn't been as much of him in the airways as last season, but he is having a strong, solid season backing up last season, and sort of 18 carries, 12 tackles. We mentioned last week we needed, to see Patrick, Hoskins really deliver, and obviously Dalton as well. But in terms of numbers, Patrick and Hoskins really delivered, but Hoskins was out and out the most. And that tight game, to be honest, he's getting better and better in and around the tight stuff. What he can do out there. But I thought, in terms of the international game, he was very, very methodical in his work in and around the tight.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some relationship work to be done there in order for Hoskins to be where he needs to be. Okay, let's frame this in a different way, Brynner. If you look at those four, if you agree that those four guys, Artie, Duplessis, Wallace Satiti and Luke Jacobson are the guys who are absolute shoo-ins out of the six, what skills don't they have that we need within our loose forward mix for the All Blacks that need to be added?
I think we need a genuine number six. And that being the very first position that they can play within a covering system. So, I think Peter Lakai is one of those people that Jip has touched on. I think the way that he has probably played this year is moulded towards, I think, international level. The cleaning of the rucks, the efficiency of the rucks, the ball carrier, the contact areas defensively, the breakdown turnovers. I think collectively, I think he has a guy that I think at international level it actually fits really well, depending on if he does play Super Rugby or not. Then you even look at a guy like Simon Parker. If you want a guy that's able to hit rucks, if you're able to have the workhorse engine like Ethan Blackadder, he's a guy that has been able to do that for the Chiefs.
He feels like a fit. To me, in that he feels like almost the only fit in that role within the country, because Samipeni Finau's just not there right now.
No, and I think Parker's filled that spot while Wallace wasn't there. He was the six. So I think if he hadn't had that time at six and had just spent the whole year at 8 for the Chiefs, it would be a little bit harder, but he's probably played his better footy on the blind side, and if that's the position they're looking to cover, you can't question his ability to win the collision. He has a lot of flair in his game. Yes, he does the tradesman-like stuff in terms of, he cleans a lot of rucks, his rucks, makes a lot of tackles, is very good in and around the breakdown and making decisions to get turnovers off the back of good, solid chop tackles. But he has actually got a lot of X-factor in his game with ball in hand, but he also has the ability to read a defence and know when he's just got to put his head down and win a collision. What
about Ethan Blackadder, Brynner? Because Ethan, we know he plays like a million miles an hour. We know he plays with a huge amount of intensity. We've talked about him being a 7 at test level and probably a good fit there. Is he a good fit at 6 at test level?
Look, he probably hasn't played enough and hasn't been available. So I guess have that question answered, Ross. But look, hey, if you're wanting a guy that is physical around the breakdown, look, he's probably not, if you're talking around all the guys in and around the breakdown, if he was class as 7, probably is the least turnovers in terms of jackal breakdown presence. But if you're talking around physicality at the breakdown, winning collisions, he's done that a lot. If you look on the weekend, his decision-making defensively as well, very good in and around tip balls around the back and making good decisions around there. And a work rate, you talk around and go to 100 miles an hour, I've seen it. Left, right and centre every single day for years. So look, I think for his biggest challenge for Ethan is that his availability and being on the field. He just hasn't been able to do that for a very consistent time. So, if you have him for a whole season and knowing Razor, they rate him and Jason Ryan obviously have big reps in him, but you've got to be able to stay on the field. So whether he can do that or not, ability-wise, I think he can, Ross, but I guess his challenge is to stay fit and not give these guys other opportunities, actually be dependable, that it can be selected for a whole campaign.
So if we're looking at a starting trio right now, based on form what we've seen in Super Rugby and what we saw in Test footy last year, it's got to be Artie at 8, Duplessis at 7, and Satiti at 6.
Yeah, for me, but as I said a few weeks ago, actually I'm comfortable with like a Duplessis in his game coming off the bench, and Jacobson, he's going to be hard to ignore to leave him out of the 7 jersey. So when I was in my mindset, as I said a few weeks back, I just think if Duplessis doesn't start, there's potentially no space for him. I actually have changed my mind on that, just because his power game with ball in hand, in and around the breakdown, late in the piece, when the match is on the line, least penalised player with the most turnovers.
Yeah.
He makes great decisions when the game is on the line. Having someone like him fresh, coming on in jersey 20, and having a Jacobson who has just delivered beyond means in that 7 jersey, probably that's the balance of the 4, which is the 4 we've said, are in. It's just however you do that.
Yeah. The other thing was that we saw on the weekend, if we're talking about All Black trials, we saw Damian McKenzie and Beauden Barrett both doing their thing, Brynner, in Hamilton. And I think it was probably fair to say that Beauden Barrett looks like he's the guy at 10.
The month that Bodie has had, I think it's, Jip, I could be wrong here, but I think it's the best that I've seen him for a long time in terms of being in the 10 jersey. And I think if you look at the Blues last year, he wasn't there, but they played a different style. But I just think with the way that he has played, especially on the weekend, his game management, his kicking decisions, his counter-attack, he still looks electric. For someone at his age, he just looks like he's still got that pop, which I think has always been a massive attribute that he's had. So, and I know in Test match footy, Razor always does talk about that game management side. How can you alleviate pressure? Jip's touched on a lot and around his communication skills and how valuable he is for players in and around him, forwards and backs. So look, I think with the performance that he's had back to back, I think in the last month, and especially playing against a number 10 as well, the incumbent World Player of the Year, number 10, and Damian McKenzie. I think right now, if I had to pick I would pick Bodie at this current form.
I tell you what, to all the young kids out there too, look at how preparation leads to performance. They had the big speaker in the Mulu Bells at training all week as he kicked those goals, and he didn't even look like he blinked when he was out there.
Yeah. They're sideline, giving
have
it
a look
claim.
on the Blues social media. I saw it, like they've done a comparison, basically saying here's the preparation week, and it was loud. I think it was Zane Sullivan was holding the speaker, and then it cuts to the game footage of Stone Cold Bodie just
slotting it.
Three of the best.
Yeah. He did have the odd one that went towards the corner flag.
It was over. He got the ones that matter.
Yeah.
But I do think it is a good lesson. Like, I've said it on here before, visualization and putting yourself in the moment does allow you, like I was even watching the game with my wife and I was like, it's over, it's done. They've got the result. She's like, hey, how are you not nervous for the kick? I was like, nah, Bodie's got it, because he just looks so focused. But I do agree with Bryn. The only game I can feel this season when he's been available, that he's had a quiet game was the Moana Pacifica game at North Harbour Stadium, where most of the Blues side would admit they had an off night. But other than that, even the game they lost against the Crusaders, when James O'Connor kicked the winning penalty goal, he was big catalyst in that. We know the Brumbies game, and then as Bryn said, the last few weeks he's been a big part of why they've been so strong. And I still think his weapon is his turn of pace, his ability to leave defenders, and if he doesn't leave defenders, he commits defenders, which creates space and time for other people. So. And the chip and chase game's definitely still there, as we saw on the weekend. I will go back to what we said earlier in the year, because I can't stand, I suppose, panellists or people that make opinions and they just chop and change all the time. So I do want to reference, I still think we may see for different opposition, Damian McKenzie and Beauden Barrett have different strengths and weaknesses, and how that fits for that week. I still think that's something we'll need to get used to. It doesn't feel right because we've had a history of, the Dan Carters and the Andrew Murdens, Grant Fox.
Mertz and Spencer were in and out, weren't they, to some degree?
Yeah. To a point, but I think, for a bulk part,
they
through that sort of 95 to,
Yeah.
You know, whenever Spencer sort of took the Blues by storm, it's always been pretty solidified 10.
Yeah.
But I think they've still got a lot to offer, both of them. And I don't think, as I said a few weeks ago, you wouldn't have done the deals that they've done without these coaches knowing and having a plan in and around these two. So I don't think it's as simple as, that's it for the season.
Yeah.
I think we've probably tried to do that in previous season, and that's when it gets us in trouble because players dip in form and so forth. So, I just think there's opposition that will suit both players, and I think we'll see that still.
While we're talking 10, Rivez Reihana is starting to find his feet.
I think Rivez has been really good, and especially, I guess, in the conditions that we saw on the weekend, like his big boot and how far he can kick that ball in the long exit phases of the exit zone is really valuable. His game management in terms of being able to find space, whether it be 50-22s, find grass, and he's also able to attack the line at pace as well, with being a little bit more bigger than Taha. So I think the pack is really standing out. Jip just touched on with the Chiefs pack, and not to say they weren't going forward, but the Crusaders set piece, the physicality at the breakdown, being able to play on the front foot and kicking on their own terms has probably led to, I guess, where Rivez was able to perform really, really well on the weekend. And let's not underestimate the work outside him. You've got Noah Hotham, who I think has actually played really, really well in terms of what they're looking for in Christchurch, wet weather conditions, kicking game, his sniping ability that he's able to bring his X factor with what he scored, with how he scored his try. But David Havili and Will Jordan, the communication and the kicking pressure that they can also take off Rivez, I guess, makes it a little bit more easier, I think, for a 10 to be able to just play your own game, execute your own role and seeing what you're seeing, knowing that the confidence, if you are down at a ruck or you aren't able to be in that position, you've got Davey and Will that can, I guess, alleviate that pressure if he's not there to be able to do it for certain times in the game.
Brunner, I asked you this, you mentioned the Crusaders pack. Teams aren't named yet, obviously. If Tamaiti Williams is not there, how big a loss is he?
He's a big loss, and it's not just for set piece. And look, they're very fortunate. They've got George Bauer, another All Black that is able to, I guess, take that starting role. But what Tams does with ball in hand, I think, Jip, is going to be really missed. I think the physicality at the breakdown defensively and more so on the attacking side, I feel that he's really big for the Crusaders in their DNA to get over that advantage line, and whether that's been able to set up the kicking for the team or get over the advantage line for their face play shape to be able to strike out wide or just in around that second or third pod, it will be a massive loss. So I'm not too sure if there's any good doctors here down at Christchurch. Jippa might have to go down and see the doc and see if he's going to be okay because he'd be a big loss in a lot of areas, just not set piece wise with how his performances and how big he is for the Crusaders.
Yeah, well, if you look at the game in Christchurch, it was won by set piece dominance.
They tore them apart in the first half.
Right, and that last scrum. I just think I think from a set piece point of view, he'd be a big hole.
The 5 penalties in the scrum was massive. They line out more and been able to have success line out more and the transition as well with Leo Willie close to the line was another good example. But their kicking game was really good on the weekend. And what I loved about their kicking game is that you know what's going to be happening. You know they're going to be doing box kicks. You know they're going to be doing contestables off 10, 12, whoever it may be, or even off counter-attack. But it's their chase. It's the connections that they have each side of each other to be able to make that kick a really good kick through the chase pressure. Look, you look at Will Jordan, I think it was the 38th minute, and I know James O'Connor doesn't kick that ball out, but you look at the kick chase that he put in to be able to stop that, to then get a penalty. If James gets that right, they probably go to the corner and they score another try. But there were so many effort areas that the Crusaders did really well, and that's really based around what finals footy looks like for that club and what I guess what they really value going into this part of the year.
To bring a bit of context to it, though, in terms of the contest, like if you look at the last game in Christchurch, the Blues, I would say Beauden and Finlay delivered a good kicking. They got 14 entries. Yeah, they did not take them, but they got in the 22. They had a high turnover count. So if they can mitigate those turnovers, I do think you've got a 9 and 10 that are in form, have got confidence. You've got a pack with a chip on their shoulder and a skipper that's playing out of his skin to lead them through what has been, a tough time. He's just led with his actions, hasn't said a lot, but he's delivered. I just think there's always a lot of talk, and I'm a big person of talking about the Crusaders know how to play in Christchurch, and you know what's coming, but you still got to stop it. And that's because I had 15 years of torture. So I'm just trying to bring myself out of that torture to go, well, if we do look at the facts, and they were poor in Eden Park,
Yeah.
but they were very good in Christchurch, and they had a game plan, and they had a player that's played 130 odd tests, put them in the right part of the field. No, they didn't take it, but they were in the right part of the field.
Like, it wasn't too long ago that there was a, and I was actually part of that game. We had don't know how many games it was, 6 or 7 years or whatever it was, that we hadn't lost the game. The Blues beat us down in Christchurch to be able to stop that run. So look, they'll take a lot of confidence with guys that have been a part of that squad. They've just gone to the Chiefs, who were very difficult to beat up in Hamilton. Nobody gave them a chance. It'd be very similar to going down to Christchurch, a rivalry game that they have a lot of passion towards, and a very confident group. They have a very good set piece when they're on their day. They've got some very good ball carriers and physicality in there on the breakdown, cleaning long rucks. They've got that game plan to do that. And they've got the X factor, I guess, and the kicking management of what Beauden Barrett and Finlay Christie have as well, alongside others as well. So I'm nervous because I know what they're capable of, and I guess the challenges for the Crusaders, and they'll enjoy that. They'll enjoy knowing what's coming as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. I just wish it was Friday right now.
I think the difference, though, is when the Blues have struggled is when the weight of expectation is on them. There is zero.
Yeah.
Like, expectation is the Crusaders get this done. Like, I think that might be quite freeing for them. Like, they've gone down last year, every time, top of the table, you must win, and they'll fall out over. This year, the expectation is they're going to back up, and and whenever they've played these games, the weight of expectation has sort of been on the Blues the last sort of 2-3 years. The shackles are well and truly off in terms of that pressure.
And the backs to the wall mentality combined with the confidence of a couple of good wins is pretty dangerous. That backs to the wall mentality, especially Rico and the social media guy, are really backs to the wall mentality.
Well, Reeks does have the nickname the Joker.
The Joker,
so you don't get that.
He's playing the cards.
Yeah. He doesn't. I think
he loves it.
Yeah, he doesn't mind, and I don't think it's bad for the game. Like, this is what it's a two-way thing, isn't it? Like, everyone's like, oh, we need more characters in the game. Then a character tries to present himself.
And he gets shot down.
And it's just a little bit, like, certainly not my personality. I wouldn't be able to pull it off either. I probably don't have the game or the runs on the board to do so. But, I think it's got people talking footy. And I've sat in a lot of rooms where everyone's like, how do we get engagement back? Well, everyone's engaged, positive or negative, people are engaged.
It's water cooler. People are talking about that on Monday. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, some posts make me sweat, but that's just my risk versus reward radar.
He did ask people to pay their Sky bill this week. So
that was good.
You do that, that'll make us people still have a job. So thank you, Rico. I really appreciate that.
He also messaged me and told me to start believing. I was like, oh, geez. Big call to say I'm not believing, but he's not letting anyone off the hook at the moment, and I love to see it. I think that passion, he's bringing the best out of, I think, everyone in that group around him.
Yeah, mate, you had hope.
I had hope.
You had hope.
I had hope. I am factual, as I've stated a few times today. But I think it sets it up for. If you look at when the Crusaders and Bryn was in the team, I think it was your last game, Bryn, in that final, everyone sort of expected the Blues to do a job at home, and they got a real backs against the wall mentality, and I know you've spoken about it previously, and you got the job done. I think the big thing will be is how they create that within their environment when I think everyone just expects them to get the home final and win this title.
What happens there then? So the Crusaders go through, right? And if the Crusaders go through, then they get the home final. But if the Crusaders lose and the Chiefs get the home final based off the fact that they're the number 2 qualifier? And then if the Crusaders and the Chiefs lose, then the Brumbies host the Blues?
Yes.
The Blues don't get the top qualifying spot because they knocked off the top dog.
There's no way back to the Garden of Eden. That's all I do know.
No way back there. I feel like if you knock off the top dog, you should get the home final.
Hey, I'm with you, Ross, but it ain't happening.
What it can do, Jip, is that it can bring back, instead of you being able to reference the Highlanders and their run that they did, you can say the Blues did it in 2025. That's what you can do.
Absolutely. As on our little call, our pre-show call last night, Jen, I reminded you of the 2015 Highlanders.
Yeah.
No one gave him a chance.
No, yeah.
There's hope.
There's hope. Was that an Alex Jackson try?
I believe, Rico. I believe.
It's Titletown, huh?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Welcome to Auckland, Titletown.
No, it's Titletown down. I don't want to take the pressure off the Crusaders. So
yeah, that's
I'll just
true.
pipe down.
No, they're definitely the favourites.
I'll pipe down.
Definitely the favourites. Oh, Brenner almost talked you into thinking that the Blues are the favourites there for a
I know.
second.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring a little bit of context.
Yeah.
They're like, okay. Bryn is the master of just deflection.
Yeah.
When it comes to a Blues Crusaders matchup.
You're defending champions, though.
Yeah, we are, mate.
You're defending champions.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I'm not going to take the bait, me old mate. But as you've stated, I think about 20 times on the podcast so far, 30-0, I don't know. And as you said, initially you said 30, but then he went back to 29. But he's already taken the win this weekend.
Yeah.
He's moving on to the final. He's already there. He's not even.
Some of your best deflecting work there, boy.
He's not even coming back to Auckland next week. He knows they're in the final, so he's staying an extra week.
Oh, I have booked my ticket, actually, Jippa. I have, actually, so.
I've heard it all.
Enough of that already. As I mentioned earlier, it's time to mix up our Rugby Ready partnership with All Blacks trainer Dr. Nick Gill and his team. Together, we're trying to get the rugby community, whether you're a player or a fan, into shape. And instead of one person getting a prize this week, the team at Rugby Ready is giving you a chance to kickstart your training for next to nothing. The first 10 sign-ups every week from here on get their first 4 weeks of the Rugby Ready Perform membership for just $1. It's strictly first come, first serve. So claim your spot, go to rugbyready.ca/rugbypod and use the code ARP when you sign up. There's also a QR code below. This offer resets each week, so if you miss out this time, make sure next week you have a shot at 10 more spots that will go live. And of course, if you miss out, you can still get 75% off memberships through ARP by going to the link, using the QR code, and using the code below. So, a huge congratulations to last week's winner of the Rugby Ready giveaway, Ryan McLean, who scored the ultimate conditioning bundle. Ryan has won it for his son, who wants to play for the Hawke's Bay Magpies and for the Hurricanes. I reckon that he is probably a big fan of Billy Proctor. We haven't had a chance yet, Brynner, to get Billy Proctor chat in just yet. Like, we've had a Billy Proctor segment. We talk about him probably every week for 2 years. Do we need to give Billy at least 30 seconds for his performance on the weekend, Brynner?
Look, I think it's just 30 seconds because we're not going to see him for the next 2 weeks. So I think maybe it's just a final goodbye before we possibly gets into the All Black squad. But no, look, I think Ross and Jip, you know, the Hurricanes would be disappointed with how they finished that game, with the way that they did play the whole year. And I guess going into the finals period, they were probably the form teams that we thought had a really genuine shot. And, you know, Billy Proctor is a big reason behind that. You know, Peter Umaga-Jensen as well, I thought has been tremendous the last couple of weeks with Higgins being injured. But like, I think what he does consistently on a day-to-day basis, what it looks like to be a centre, Billy just does it at a very, very high level. So, yeah, that All Black team will be named very shortly. He's going to be in that squad. And look, I think, me personally, should get the crack to have a starting shot at that 30. I think we know that Rico's going to be there. He's going to get given his opportunity as well. And, you know, he's proven to be able to do that. But I think there's no better opportunity with the runs on the board that Billy's had. What are we going to lose? Given an opportunity in that French series. So Jippa might feel a bit different in and around that. But, yeah, I think he is ready if he does get given that opportunity early in that June series.
Believe.
I mean, I just can't win because obviously I was the quote. I seem to be the regular quote for the social media posts at the moment, and obviously I said I think Billy Proctor's the glue for them to go all the way.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm loving our increase in our social game. It's great for engagement and followers. But I tell you what, I get some feedback, and I'm pretty sure people just read one of them and not all of them.
Yes.
And I've been accused of jumping off the Blues wagon.
Yeah.
And jumping onto the Canes Proctor wagon. I'll state again, I'm just basing on facts. I still think there were a couple of injuries like in a Safa more that just didn't allow the Canes to get the job done in Canberra.
Yeah.
So I said they were a dark horse. I didn't say it was guaranteed. But yes, Billy is playing extremely well. Yes, Rico is galvanising the group extremely well. So I think it's a hard call, and the All Blacks is not a development side, so the hard calls will need to be made.
Yeah.
Thank God I don't have to.
It is challenging. And
Believe.
That's the thing. We do have a quote from the social. That's out of 55 minutes of programming. So you've got to take
got a few today.
You've got to take that 5 seconds to go hard on social.
You've got a few today. I think Brent Hall's 30-0 should be the one this week.
30.
And then
I was just
we should
thinking
just asterisk it's 29, but Bryn's already in the final. Something like that. I reckon that really will get a bit of bite.
Well, I don't need to be on any social site. We need your face out there, mate, as the poster boy. I think you go pretty good, mate. You go pretty good, Jippa.
Right, okay. And before we get to making our picks for the weekend, because I think we both know who's going to pick who in one particular game, we've got another question just to go to. We've got a question through from Mark Weston via the email, aotearoarugbypod@sky.co.nz. It says, great show, guys, thank you. As for speeding up our beautiful game, a try under the post should be an automatic 7 points. Players will try to score and defend the middle more. That sounds like a good idea. Why are we taking a shot at goal when, in the most part, it's not necessary? Just get back to halfway and go for it.
Yeah, well, you can't.
Yeah.
It's not the sevens.
Yeah.
So so we've got the shot clock. So the conversion's already sped up and we've killed a lot of dead time.
Yeah.
The conversion gets taken, and then what normally slows the whole game out is, say there's a yellow card, or teams are ahead by 1 and they're looking at the clock and then they dawdle to halfway. I've had this conversation previously with Conrad Smith and going, does that, but you put a shot clock on the conversion, you put a shot clock on, there's going to be a lot of rushing and I'm not sure what the outcome would be. I think maybe NPC's a good place to trial these innovations, what history is showing, but I agree, I can agree with the concept, but I think when you look at it in terms of the numbers and what you've got, you score a try, you've got 30 seconds to put the tee down and go.
Yeah.
It's even if you look at the Beauden Barrett kick on the weekend, he didn't have a lot of time. He was tee down, there was a lot of, celebration, and then the kick just had to go pretty quickly. So I understand the concept, but I think if we're wanting to make up time, I think it's more when the next kickoff is, rather than removing the conversion.
Make them run back to halfway.
Potentially, I wouldn't have enjoyed that when we played, when I played. But that's the only space. That's the only space left to get rid of time.
Yeah.
With scrums, lineouts, conversions, there's not really much more time you can shave, and you've got to let the athlete go through his process or her process in preparation.
Yeah. But actually get under the post maybe, Brynn. I know you probably haven't
But
done
I suppose
that much
that's his point, isn't it?
Yeah, Brynn's
actually,
really...
as I said that, his point is don't worry about the process, just give them points.
Just give them the points and go. But then there's the process of recovering under the post, Brynn.
True.
A team that has copped that try then gets into a huddle and has a think. How are we going to make this work? And that gives them a chance to get back into the game, that process. If you got rid of that, would that make it worse?
The slow ball effect could continue to keep happening, because I think you are right, Ross. Whenever you get a try or 2 tries scored in pretty quick succession, there's a message coming up from upstairs in terms of maybe what you're doing wrong. That's then said to the group. Then you're able to have a deep breath. You've seen it a lot. Pretty much every team in the world rugby gets in a huddle and takes a big deep breath to reset. So, and then has been given messages as a solution to then try and fix what's happened. So if that was taken out, it does become more, I guess, the players on the field have to try and find solutions on the run collectively, whether that's more players would have to try and talk to different people in different areas. But yeah, it'd be pretty hard. I think we're doing a pretty good job, especially in Super Rugby, to be able to make shot clocks, line out sets, scrum sets. We're doing a pretty good job. And ball in play has increased, since these new rules have been brought in as well.
I tell you what, speaking of ball and play, Andrew Webster, the Warriors coach, took a hell of a shot across the bow at rugby the other day.
Yeah.
Holy dooly. He was like, oh yeah, ball and play at NRL 60 minutes. Not sure that's factual.
Yeah.
And then said we were like 29 or 30 minutes. I'm like, come on, mate.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to come out with a bold statement, at least get your facts right. Like, I think the Blues Chiefs game in winter was 41, just under 42 minutes on the weekend.
Yeah.
Ball and play. So Andrew Webster. Come on, mate. You're better than that.
Yeah, we'll give you credit. He did say that the NRL's on the rise, and there's no doubt about that. But, rugby is still king.
Oh, just 29 to 30 minutes, ball and play. I think he's watching club rugby.
Yeah.
But up the wires, though. Up the wires.
Still a professional sport.
Up the wires. But 29 minutes. Come on, Webby, mate. Come on, Webby.
He was on an Australian radio show, so he thought it was only going there. But the beauty of social media, there's no hiding.
Mate, invite him up to the box at Harbour. Let him experience that. He'll be a convert in no time.
Well, I don't think so. I think it's going to be a hard sell. It's going to be a hard sell.
Right, okay. Off the back of that, let's talk about this weekend, the games that Andrew Webster should be watching, the semi-finals. Webby,
Yes.
I'd like to know what he thinks about the Crusaders versus the Blues. I know what you guys are going to think. Okay, we've talked ad nauseum about this game. The people who watch this show and go, all you do is talk about the Crusaders and the Blues. You would have loved this episode.
Apparently I'm on the cane train.
Biggest
I
game
can't
fan
win. 1 week I'm all Blues, now I'm cane train.
Right, well, as a Hurricanes fan,
I'm going
who
for
do
the
you
full
think-
believe.
Yeah.
The full believe this week.
Believe.
And I'm just going to say the Blues.
The head and the heart
Yep.
is Blues.
Yep.
Believe.
I'm not going to give a story this week. I'm just going,
Yeah.
chips are all in.
Yeah, that's what we're just going to put in the social post. Jippa believes.
I do.
And we'll tag Enrico.
Yeah.
And we'll get it on.
Yeah. Well, his methods worked. I tell you what, it's made me rethink my approach.
You're fired up.
Yeah.
And you believe in the Crusaders, don't you? You're nervous, but you believe in the Crusaders.
I believe it's probably a different colour, though. So, yeah, look, I don't know how many times I've talked over the years around this clash, and look, I think it's going to add it's another chapter that's going to be brought up around the show. So look, I think from what I've seen in the weather conditions and what it's going to look like, it's going to be a wet, dewy, cold evening, a packed house, hopefully down at obviously down here, and it's going to be a physical game. And I look forward to seeing who comes out on top, Jippa.
Well, the last villain on a title run was Carlos Spencer, and he scored at Jade Stadium, I think, and went right into the corner. And you know, Rico is really playing the villain like Spencer in 03.
Yeah.
So you know, just watch the space.
Who's going to deliver him the ball? Who's going to get him going?
Probably Josh Berry.
Josh Berry. He's going well.
He is going very well. As we said a few weeks back in the stats, he was very high up across the competition.
Right, let's talk Chiefs Brumbies then. Chiefs at home against the Brumbies. Straightforward?
No. I think the Chiefs will win, but I don't think it's straightforward. I was really impressed with... I think that was out and out the best game the Brumbies had played. The thing is they need to contain their ability to... that midfield defence, and they can't have Lolosio and co biting in like that because, as I said before, like Rona will expose them with Sean and Imoni and co, Leroy Carter as well.
Yeah. Do you see a world where the Brumbies come to town and then get into a final?
I don't see it happening, but they definitely do have a chance with the way that they did play on the weekend, and probably what's required. You have to think maybe it might be a bit dewy. And Hamilton, there might be a bit of rain flowing around. They definitely have the game set piece, physicality, breakdown to be able to get that right, I think. And also, we've probably been touched on, maybe some injury concerns with the Chiefs as well. I know there was a few in that back end of that game that got injured or under a little bit of an injury crowd. But we don't know, obviously, Luke Jacobson and how long he's out for. So, that kind of physical team that we did see against Moana Pacifica, some of those players might not be playing. But look, the Chiefs, well, I believe that this review will be a very, very hard review. You won't even need to have a review, to be honest, because they'll be hurting that much and knowing what they let slip. But I actually think they come in and actually have a very, very dominant performance against the Brumbies, who have actually struggled coming to Hamilton. I think the Brumbies have done, in the last 4 to 5 years, have done the business, winning their home game in Canberra, but then have come to New Zealand and haven't been able to get the job done. So I'll be picking the Chiefs.
So there you go, Andrew Webster, when you head down to the flat. Follow those when you're watching your
Blues 1 to 12, Chiefs 1 to 12. Get on board and believe, Andrew.
It'll be on. Thank you, Andrew, for watching the show. Thank you to the rest of you out there for watching Aotearoa Rugby Pod this week. Thanks, of course, to these two blokes who are going to enjoy a wonderful game of footy on Friday night down in Christchurch. Thank you to everyone behind the scenes who helps put the show together. And thank you, of course, to Ashley and Martin for sponsoring the show and getting us to where we really appreciate your help. Thank you. We'll see you next week. Mā te wā.